I dare not risk messing up that introduction, so I'm going to give my benediction right now. I want to thank Brother Moore for that extraordinary introduction. He certainly does his homework. That's one of the most memorable and felicitous and melodic and intelligent introductions I've ever received. As the renowned philosopher Sean Carter says, I guess I get my swag back. What a marvelous and insightful oration he delivered already, and I'm grateful and honored to be here today. I want to thank Ms. Alma Brown, a remarkable woman. A great human being, a sweet and tender soul, a compassionate person, for the invitation to come here today to be able to chat with you a bit about the vision and the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. Now, I want to, of course, salute the mayor and all politicians, councilmen and women, state senators and legislators, and all of the dignitaries who are gathered here today, and to all of the administrators of this program, to all members of organizations that supported it, to all of the businesses that chipped in, and to you, my brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Good afternoon. It is an honor to be here in the city of Richard Franklin Lennox Thomas Pryor. Wow. Peoria, Illinois. And you talk about coming out of nothing. This man rising up from his grandmother's brothel to become the foremost comedic force in the 20th century, certainly in the last half of that century. And to come here to Peoria at this particular time, Mr. Moore has already alluded to Mrs. Whitaker and Smith and Smiley in such poetic and aesthetically pleasing fashion. You know, and some folk ask me what it feels like to replace. I said, you know, God couldn't come, so he sent Jesus. I ain't saying I'm Jesus. I'll let Tim Tebow have that. What I'm saying, I guess the Lord forgot him yesterday. But what's, I jest. I love Tim Tebow as a human being, for surely. And for certainly, I don't know what Jesus got to do with football. Because if Tim Tebow was, after every touchdown, going to the honorable, to the beneficent, to the Most High Allah, I don't know. And getting down on his knees, turning to the east, and praying to Allah, all praises be to Allah, I don't know if he'd be that popular. What y'all think? But I'm used to being replacements, and that ain't no problem. I'm just glad to be here. Because what could have been intended by one person could work divine intention on another matter. So you be thinking you're going to do one thing and end up doing something else. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I'm glad to be here. Now, I know all of the men who have been mentioned. Forrest Whitaker and I met memorably one time when we were both at Oprah Winfrey's house. I don't want to name drop, but I was there. at the fundraiser, the first big fundraiser for Barack Obama. And Forrest Whitaker and I hung out and talked, and me and Chris Rock and Barack Obama were huddled up. I'll tell you what Chris told him one day. And then met his acquaintance again a couple months ago. So we have been friendly for quite a while. Emmett Smith, I just saw not this past weekend, but weekend before, when we were at the Trumpet Awards in Atlanta. And, he's got the most yards of any running back, arguably the greatest running back in the history of the NFL, and an extraordinary man. Tavis Smiley is a very dear friend of mine. I've known Tavis for years and years and years. He's one of the first persons to put me on national TV. And so I have love for Tavis Smiley. I think he's an extraordinary human being. This is not about, right? I think he's an extraordinary human being, an extraordinary journalist, a highly intelligent young man who's doing what he thinks is best. And ain't no harm in none of that. So I love all three of these gentlemen. I ain't here because I'm against nobody. I'm here for the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you'll see later, I've written 2 books on Dr. King, so Dr. King would have taken some controversial stance, and did. He got disinvited too, trust me. Oh, Tavis is in good company, right? Ms. Brown has nothing against Tavis Smiley. None of us do. We have nothing, I don't have anything against Newt Gingrich, except him being president. Shout out to the Republicans, but don't worry, Democrats coming up real soon for a whipping. You just hold on. We'll be equal opportunity in our love. But it's not about the personal matter, because I love Barack Obama. I was one of Barack Obama's first surrogates. Ebony Magazine said the first black prominent surrogate. I don't know about that, but I was out there with him when most black people were supporting Hillary. And it was an honor to work with this president and to see him into office, and what an extraordinary man he is. And I say that, I'm going to get right into my speech. I say that because I support him, but I support him not without criticism, as you shouldn't. Nobody who's worth your support can be exempt from your critique. I love my child. I can't criticize him. What? I love my husband and wife. I don't, trust me, that ain't how that goes. So Toni Morrison said, can't I criticize what I love? We know that the hatred against Obama has been extraordinary. And we know unprincipled assaults and attacks upon him have been with vicious specificity against him as a black man. There's no other way to say it. Some of the assault on Obama ain't got nothing to do with politics, but everything to do with him being a brother. On the other hand, that don't mean that we can't hold him accountable. I remember during the, and I'm getting to my speech, don't worry, what are you doing? What are you saying? Did he know this about King? Right? During the election process where he was running during the campaign, Wolf Blitzer asked him on CNN, what do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would do, and would he support your candidacy? You know what Obama says? I love him for this. He said, Dr. King wouldn't support any of us as a candidate. What he would do instead was seek to hold us accountable. Now, if Tavis Smiley is attempting to hold Barack Obama accountable, that's what Barack Obama said Dr. King would do, which means that Tavis Smiley is in that Kingian tradition. Now, that don't mean you got to agree with Tavis Smiley either. It simply means that none of us should be exempt from criticism, and none of us should hold grudges against anybody who seeks the best for black people and others in America. And I'll end by saying this before I go on. Tavis Smiley for a decade held State of the Black Union and educated millions of people about the need. He held George Bush accountable. I was there. He was on his behind like white on rice. He was holding Bill Clinton accountable too, so he can't exempt Barack Obama from criticism because that would subvert the integrity of his tradition. So I celebrate Emmett Smith, Forrest Whitaker, and Tavis Smiley, and Barack Obama. And I know this is nonpartisan, so I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I will not be voting for anybody but a guy from Illinois. Or if you really want to show you love the people but you ain't familiar with them, Illinois. Today, when I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I think about a great man. I think about a man who loved justice and a man who embraced people of every race, color, creed, religion, and nationality. When I think about Martin Luther King Jr., I think about a man who did not live to be 40, who rose from the soil of Georgia in Atlanta, a city too busy to hate, they said, and yet the hatred was pervasive. A man whose vision of social justice and transformation was nurtured in the womb by a loving mother whose father was a preacher, pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, whose father succeeded his wife's mother, his wife's father, as pastor of that church. Martin Luther King Jr. from the beginning was taught a love ethic, was imbued with a tradition of service that derived from his sense of being a religious man and a Christian. Martin Luther King Jr. was highly intelligent. At the age of 15, he went to Morehouse College. The numbers of black men had been depleted during the war, and as a result of that, there was an early admission process for those who were keenly intelligent. And Martin Luther King Jr. fit the bill. Maynard Jackson would do the same later on, going to Morehouse at the same tender age. Graduated at 19, he wasn't a stellar student. He wasn't sparkling, he got C's. I mean, some people who go to college at 19, 20, 21 get C's. They ain't even figured it out yet. You figure a 15-year-old boy who was full of play, very cerebral, but he had a little flash to him. He and his friend called themselves the Wrecking Crew. Why? He said, we wreck all the ladies. I'm not saying Dr. King was prefiguring rap, but he might have borrowed the line from Big Pun, I'm not a player, I just crush a lot. He was known as Tweed because he wore nice clothes. And so before you damn too quickly those young people who seem to be mindlessly materialistic and consumed with brand labels, don't forget Martin Luther King Jr. had an evolution of consciousness. And so Dr. King, known as Tweed, Sharp, Wrecking Crew, an affinity for the ladies, began to be bombarded with consciousness, however, about the need to do something bigger with his life. His daddy was a preacher. This is why he ran from being a preacher. He didn't want to be an anti-intellectual representative of an evangelical piety that had no critical consciousness. In other words, he didn't want to be no preacher getting up there saying a bunch of stuff and ain't saying nothing. Now we know that's not true of preachers in Peoria.